There's a lie that gets repeated so often in farming communities that it stops sounding like a lie. It sounds like wisdom. Deere holds its value, Massey doesn't. You hear it at the co-op, you hear it at the dealer, you hear it from your neighbors, your banker, your own family. And if you hear it enough times from enough people, you start to believe it's true, even when the numbers say otherwise. This is the story of a man who believed that lie for 12 years, who made every equipment decision based on resale value instead of operating cost, who traded a paid-off Massey Ferguson for a John Deere because everyone told him it was the smart financial move, and who learned the truth 5 years later when he tried to sell that Deere and watched his equity evaporate in front of him. His name was Todd Marchek, and the lesson he learned cost him $136,000. Todd Marchek farmed 2,100 acres of corn and soybeans in central Illinois, third-generation operation, solid ground, good yields, conservative management. He wasn't a risk-taker. He wasn't flashy. He made decisions based on what other successful farmers were doing, and in his county, successful farmers ran green iron. Todd had run Massey Ferguson equipment for most of his career. A 7480 in the early 2000s, then a 7495. Then, in 2012, he bought a Massey Ferguson 7622 Dyna VT, a 220 horsepower workhorse with a continuously variable transmission that was smooth, efficient, and bulletproof. He paid $187,000 for it new. By 2019, he'd put 4,600 hours on it. No major failures, regular maintenance, solid performance. The tractor had cost him an average of $6,400 per year in upkeep. Filters, fluids, wear parts, one injector replacement, one set of rear tires. It was paid off. It ran strong. It had at least 5,000 more hours left in it before any major component work would be needed. But everywhere Todd went, he heard the same thing. You need to get into a Deere before that Massey loses all its value. He heard it from his neighbor, who ran 3 John Deere 8R series tractors and swore by their resale strength. He heard it from his banker, who said Deere equipment was easier to finance because the depreciation curve was more predictable. He heard it from the John Deere salesman, who told him that Massey Ferguson resale was a known problem, and that waiting too long to trade would cost him equity. And Todd started to believe it. Because when everyone around you is saying the same thing, it's hard to ignore. In the spring of 2019, Todd walked into the local John Deere dealership, not because his Massey Ferguson was failing, not because he needed more horsepower, but because he was convinced that staying in red iron was costing him money on the back end. The salesman saw him coming. "Todd, good to see you. What brings you in?" "Thinking about trading the Massey." The salesman nodded like he'd been expecting this. "Smart move. What year is it?" 2012, 7622, 4,600 hours. The salesman pulled up the valuation software, punched in the specs, and showed Todd the screen. "We can give you $82,000 on trade." Todd blinked. "82? I paid $187 for it." The salesman shrugged. "That's the Massey Ferguson problem, Todd. Resale just isn't there. If that was a Deere 8R from the same year with the same hours, we'd be talking 130, 140 easy." Todd felt his stomach tighten. He'd known the resale wouldn't be great, but a $105,000 loss in 7 years felt brutal. "What if I wait another year or two?" The salesman leaned back. "Then you're looking at 70, maybe 75. It's only going down from here. The longer you hold it, the worse the number gets." Todd stared at the screen. $82,000, 7 years of ownership, 4,600 hours of flawless performance. And all he'd get back was 82 grand. The salesman let the silence sit for a moment, then pivoted. "Look, I can put you in an 8370R, 245 horsepower, IVT transmission, all the tech. We'll take the Massey on trade, and you'll be financed at 4.2% over 7 years. Monthly payments about $4,200. Todd did the math in his head. 82,000 trade value. The 8370R listed at $298,000. That meant $216,000 financed. $4,200 a month for 7 years. It felt steep. But the alternative, keeping the Massey and watching it lose another $10,000 or $15,000 a year in value, felt worse. Todd signed the papers that afternoon. The John Deere 8370R was a good tractor. Smooth, powerful, comfortable. It had a better cab than the Massey Ferguson, better auto steer integration, better dealer support. Todd didn't regret the performance, but he felt the payment immediately. $4,200 a month. That was $50,400 a year. His Massey Ferguson had been paid off. His annual cost on it had been $6,400 in maintenance. Now, he was paying $5,400 annually just to own the Deere, before factoring in maintenance, insurance, or fuel. But Todd told himself it was fine, because when he eventually traded this Deere, the resale would be strong. He'd recoup the equity. He'd be ahead in the long run. That's what everyone had told him. For the first 3 years, Todd didn't think much about resale. He focused on farming. The 8370R performed well. He made his payments on time. Crop prices were decent. By 2022, the tractor had 3,200 hours on it. No major issues. One DEF system sensor replacement under warranty. One software update at the dealer. Routine maintenance otherwise. But Todd started hearing things. He heard about a farmer, 2 counties over, who'd tried to trade a 2017 Deere 83345R and got offered $40,000 less than he'd expected. He heard about another guy who'd listed a 2018 8320R for private sale and had it sit on the market for 9 months before dropping the price twice. He heard whispers that the used Deere market was softer than it used to be. But the dealer kept telling him the same thing. Deere holds value better than anything else out there. You're in good shape. Todd wanted to believe that. He needed to believe that. Sweat. Because if Deere resale wasn't as strong as everyone claimed, then the entire financial logic of his 2019 trade fell apart. In the fall of 2023, Todd started thinking about downsizing. Not because he was struggling, not because the farm was failing, but because he was 58 years old. His son had decided not to come back to the operation, and he was tired of carrying $216,000 in tractor debt for a machine he didn't need at full capacity anymore. He wanted something smaller, something paid off, something that didn't come with a $4,200 monthly payment. So in January 2024, Todd called the John Deere dealer. "I'm thinking about trading down. What's my 8370 worth?" The salesman pulled up the tractor in the system. "Let me get the used equipment manager on the line." 2 days later, Todd got a call back. "We can offer you 162. Todd's chest went tight. 162? As in 162,000? That's correct. I paid $298 for it. I understand, but it's a 2019 now. 4,900 hours. The market's shifted. We've got 3 8370s sitting on our lot right now that we can't move. Demand's down." Todd felt the air leave the room. He'd owned the tractor for 5 years. He'd made 60 months of payments, $50,400 a year. Total paid, $252,000. And now the dealer was telling him the tractor was worth $162,000. That was a $136,000 loss. Todd hung up and sat in his kitchen for 20 minutes without moving. He didn't accept the trade offer. Instead, he listed the 8370R for private sale. He priced it at $215,000. Clean tractor, low hours, full service records. He posted it on Tractor House, Machinery Pete, and 3 regional Facebook groups. The first week he got 2 inquiries. Both wanted detailed photos. Both ghosted after he sent them. The second week, one guy called and offered $175,000 sight unseen. Todd said no. The third week, nothing. By the end of the month, Todd dropped the price to $199,000. He got one offer, $168,000. He turned it down. In March, he dropped it again, $189,000. Still nothing. In April, a farmer from Indiana called. "I'll give you $175. That's my number." Todd asked for $185,000. The guy said no and hung up. Todd sat with the phone in his hand and realized something. The resale strength everyone had promised him didn't exist. The Deere wasn't holding value. It was hemorrhaging equity, just like every other piece of equipment on the market. And the $105,000 loss he'd taken on his Massey Ferguson trade-in 5 years ago? That wasn't a Massey Ferguson problem. That was a depreciation reality that applied to every tractor, regardless of color. In May 2024, Todd did something he should have done 5 years earlier. He pulled up the used equipment listings and started comparing actual resale data. Not what dealers claimed, not what salesmen promised, actual selling prices on comparable equipment. He found a 2012 Massey Ferguson 76622, the exact model he'd traded in 2019, listed for sale in Iowa, 5,400 hours, good condition. Asking price, $89,000. It sold in 3 weeks for $86,000. Todd did the math. If he'd kept his 7622 from 2019 to 2024, it would have depreciated from the $82,000 trade value the dealer offered him down to roughly $86,000 in private sale. That's a $4,000 loss over 5 years. Instead, he'd traded it for a Deere 8370R that had lost $136,000 in the same time period. Then he found a 2012 Massey Ferguson 8730, a different model but similar age and class, listed in Nebraska, 6,100 hours, sold for $178,000. Original MSRP in 2012, $209,000. That was a $31,000 loss over 12 years. Todd pulled up a comparable John Deere 8R series from 2012, found one in Missouri, 6,200 hours, listed at $162,000. Originally sold for $287,000 is in 2012. That was a $125,000 loss over 12 years. Todd sat back and stared at the screen. The Massey Ferguson had lost $31,000 in 12 years. The Deere had lost $125,000 in 12 years. The resale gap everyone had warned him about? It went the other direction. Todd called his neighbor, the one who'd told him for years that Deere resale was unbeatable. "Jim, you still running those 8Rs? "Yeah. Why? What do you think they're worth right now?" Jim laughed. "I try not to think about it." "Seriously, you ever priced them?" Silence. "I did once. Couple years ago. Dealer offered me about 60% of what I paid." 60%? "Yeah. I told him to get lost. I'm just going to run them into the ground. No point in trading when the resale's that bad." Todd felt his jaw tighten. "So you knew the resale was bad?" "Well, yeah. But Deere's still better than Massey." "You ever actually check?" Jim didn't answer. Todd hung up. In June 2024, Todd finally sold the 8370R. He took $171,000 from a farmer in Wisconsin who needed it immediately and didn't want to wait for a dealer trade. It was the best offer Todd had received in 4 months. He paid off the remaining loan balance, $68,000, and walked away with $103,000 in his pocket. He'd paid $252,000 in total payments over 5 years. He'd recovered $103,000. Net loss, $149,000. Not counting interest, not counting the opportunity cost of the payments, not counting the $82,000 trade value he'd given up on the Massey Ferguson. Just the hard, direct loss, $149,000. For 5 years of ownership. Todd didn't buy another tractor right away. He rented time on a neighbor's equipment for the 2024 season and took the time to think. He thought about the 12 years he'd spent believing that Massey Ferguson resale was garbage. He thought about the conversations at the co-op, the dealer advice, the banker's reassurances. He thought about the fact that no one had ever shown him actual data. They just repeated the same line over and over until it sounded true. Deere holds its value. But it didn't, not in any measurable way that mattered. Yes, Deere had strong brand recognition. Yes, their dealer network was bigger. Yes, their financing was aggressive. But when it came time to sell, the depreciation curve was just as brutal. Because depreciation isn't about the color of the paint. It's about age, hours, condition, and market demand. And in 2024, the market for used high-horsepower tractors was soft across every brand. In August 2024, Todd found a 2016 Massey Ferguson 7718S listed for sale in eastern Illinois. 3,800 hours, one owner, full service records, asking $134,000. He called the seller. "This thing been serviced at a dealer?" "No, I do most of it myself. Oil, filters, minor stuff. Anything bigger, I've got a mobile mechanic I trust." "Any issues?" "None. It's been flawless." Todd drove out to look at it the next day. The tractor was clean, no leaks, no unusual wear. The CVT transmission was smooth, the hydraulics were responsive. He test drove it for 20 minutes, then made an offer. $128. The seller countered at $131,000. Todd agreed. He paid cash. No financing, no monthly payment, no 7-year commitment. He drove the 7718 home and parked it in his shed next to the spot where the 8370R used to sit. It had 30 fewer horsepower than the Deere. It didn't have the same cab tech. It didn't have the same dealer support network. But it was paid off, and when Todd eventually sold it, the depreciation wouldn't destroy him. Because he'd learned the lesson. Resale value isn't about brand mythology. It's about math. 3 months later, Todd ran into the John Deere salesman at the co-op. The guy saw him and smiled. "Hey, Todd, heard you sold the 8370? You looking at the new 8R series? We got some aggressive financing right now." Todd looked at him. "I bought a Massey Ferguson." The salesman's smile faltered. "Oh, well, you know those don't hold value like—" Todd cut him off. "I sold your Deere for $171. I paid $298. That's a $127,000 loss in 5 years. Don't talk to me about resale value." The salesman opened his mouth, then closed it. Todd walked away. By the fall of 2024, Todd had been running the Massey Ferguson 7718 for 3 months. No issues, no breakdowns, just steady, reliable performance. His equipment costs dropped to under $4,000 for the year. Oil changes, filters, 1 set of front tires. No payment, no interest, no dealer service calls. He'd gone from spending $50,400 a year on equipment payments to spending $4,000 a year on maintenance. That was a $46,400 annual savings. And when he eventually sold the 7718, he knew exactly what to expect. It would depreciate. All equipment does, but it wouldn't lose $136,000 in 5 years. Because he wasn't financing it. He wasn't over-leveraging. He wasn't chasing resale mythology. He was just farming. In November 2024, Todd got a call from a younger farmer in the next county. The guy had heard Todd's story and wanted advice. "I'm thinking about trading my Massey for a Deere. Everyone keeps telling me it's the smart move for resale. What do you think?" Todd didn't hesitate. Don't. Why not? Because resale value is a dealer sales pitch, not a financial reality. You want to know what holds value. Not carrying debt, not making payments, running equipment until it's actually worn out instead of trading every 5 years because someone told you the color matters. Silence on the other end. "So you think I should keep the Massey?" "I think you should keep whatever's paid off and run it until the wheels fall off. And when you do sell it, don't believe the guy who tells you his brand depreciates slower. Pull the actual comps. Look at real selling prices. The data doesn't lie." The kid thanked him and hung up. Todd didn't know if the advice would stick, but he'd said it anyway because someone needed to. It's now December 2024. Todd Marchek is 59 years old. He's farming 2,100 acres with a paid-off 2016 Massey Ferguson 7718 and a 15-year-old planter he rebuilt himself. He has no equipment debt. His annual operating costs are the lowest they've been in a decade. And when people ask him why he switched back to Massey Ferguson after running Deere, he tells them the truth. "I didn't switch back because Massey's better. I switched back because I stopped listening to resale mythology and started looking at the actual numbers." The numbers were brutal. His 2012 Massey Ferguson 7622 lost approximately $31,000 in trade value from 2012 to 2019, about $4,400 per year. His 2019 John Deere A370R lost $136,000 in actual equity from 2019 to 2024, about $27,200 per year. That's a 6-fold difference in depreciation rate. Not because Massey Ferguson holds value better than Deere in some universal sense, but because Todd bought the Massey Ferguson at a lower price point, carried it longer, and didn't over-lever himself chasing resale promises that never materialized. The lie wasn't that Deere builds bad equipment. The lie was that color determines depreciation. It doesn't. Debt does. Leverage does. Over-leveraging does. And the moment Todd stopped making equipment decisions based on what everyone else said and started making them based on what the spreadsheet said, his operation stabilized. In early 2025, Todd was at the co-op when he overheard 2 younger farmers talking. One of them was considering trading a Massey Ferguson 7720 for a Deere 8R. "Everyone says Deere holds value better." The other one nodded. "Yeah, that's what I've heard too." Todd almost walked past, but he stopped. He turned around. "You want to know what actually holds value?" Both guys looked at him. Not having a payment, one of them frowned. But what about resale? Todd pulled out his phone, opened a spreadsheet, and showed them the numbers. The Massey Ferguson depreciation curve, the Deere depreciation curve, the actual comps, the real sold prices. This is what I lost on a Deere in 5 years. This is what a comparable Massey lost in 12. You do the math. Both of them stared at the screen. Neither of them said anything. Todd put his phone away. Do what you want, but don't do it because someone told you a color holds value. Do it because you ran the numbers, and the numbers make sense. He walked out. The truth about resale value is simple. Every piece of equipment depreciates. The question isn't whether your tractor will lose value. The question is how much value you lose, how fast you lose it, and whether the depreciation cost is worth the benefit you're getting. If you're financing $298,000 to get a tractor that depreciates $27,000 per year and you're paying $50,400 per year in loan payments, your total annual cost of ownership is over $77,000. If you're buying a $131,000 tractor with cash that depreciates $8,000 per year, your total annual cost of ownership is $8,000 plus maintenance. That's the difference between surviving and struggling when margins get tight. And Todd Marchek learned it the hard way. He lost $149,000 chasing resale mythology. But he's not losing anymore because he stopped listening to the lie and he started listening to the math.